Hello and welcome to Local Gardener. In this episode, we steep your curiosity in the rich culture and history of tea. Today, we're exploring the different types of tea, their fascinating history, and the big question, can you grow and drink your own tea in the UK? Grab your favourite mug and let's dive in. Tea's history goes back over 5,000 years, beginning in China with the legendary Emperor Sheng Nong. From there, tea spread across Asia and eventually to the rest of the world. By the 17th century, tea had reached Europe and quickly became a beloved beverage, especially in Britain. The East India Company played a key role in making tea a staple of British life, and by the 18th century, tea was everywhere, from high society to common households. But what many people don't know is that all true tea comes from just one plant, Camellia sinensis. This single plant gives us a wide variety of teas, and we'll talk about those in just a moment. All true tea comes from the Camellia sinensis plant, but how the leaves are processed gives us the different types of tea. Let's go through them. White tea is the least processed. Made from young buds, it has a light floral flavour. Green tea is slightly more processed, giving it a grassy, fresh taste. Oolong tea undergoes partial oxidation, sitting between green and black tea in terms of flavour and strength. Black tea is fully oxidised, which gives it a rich, bold taste. Pu'er tea is fermented, producing deep, earthy notes. Each of these teas starts with the same plant, but is crafted through different methods of withering, rolling and oxidising the leaves. It's the artistry of processing that creates the flavours we know and love. But can you grow tea in the UK? The answer is yes. While the UK's cooler climate isn't ideal for all plants, tea is surprisingly hardy, especially the Camellia sinensis variant sinensis, which can tolerate cooler conditions. A great example of this is Tregothnan Estate in Cornwall, which has been growing tea commercially since the 1990s. If you want to grow your own tea at home, here's what you need to know. Firstly, location. Tea plants thrive in acidic, well-drained soil. They prefer a spot with partial sun, ideally sheltered from harsh winds. Watering is important. Tea likes moisture but hates soggy roots, so make sure to water consistently without overwatering. And finally, temperature. Though tea plants are frost tolerant, it's best to protect them in the colder months, either by mulching heavily or growing them in pots that can be moved indoors or into a greenhouse during winter. If you're patient and provide the right care, within a few years your tea will produce leaves that can be harvested for tea. But once you've grown the plant, how do you make tea from it? Here's how you turn those fresh tea leaves into something ready to steep in your own mug. First, Harvest. Begin by picking the youngest leaves and buds from the top of the plant. These are the most tender and produce the best flavour. Second, wither the leaves. This is done by laying the leaves out on a tray or clean cloth in a cool, shady area for between 12 and 24 hours. This step removes excess moisture and softens the leaves, preparing them for the next stage, rolling. Gently roll the withered leaves between your hands or on a surface to bruise them, which helps release their natural oils. The amount of rolling depends on what kind of tea you want to make. For green tea, roll lightly to keep the oxidation minimal. For black tea, roll more vigorously to promote full oxidation. The actual process of oxidation, you let the rolled leaves sit for a few more hours. The longer the leaves have left, the darker and richer they'll become. For green tea, you'll want to skip most of this step and move on to drying quickly. Now for drying, once you start drying, you stop oxidation and preserve the tea. You'll need to dry the leaves. You can do this by spreading them on a baking sheet and drying them in an oven at a low temperature of about, say, 90 degrees centigrade for 20 minutes, or air drying them for a few days in a dry, cool place. And once they're dry, store the leaves, but they must be completely dry and crispy. Store them in an airtight container away from light and moisture. Your homemade tea is now ready to brew. Well, that's the basic process, but it's really an art form that you can experiment with and perfect over time. Each batch might be a little different, and that's the fun of it, making your very own tea blend grown and processed in your own garden. Now, once you've got your tea, the next step comes to brew it. And let's talk about brewing. The key to a good cup of tea, especially with homegrown leaves, is water temperature and steeping time. Here's a quick guide. For green tea, use water at around 70 to 80 degrees centigrade and steep for 2 to 3 minutes. For black tea, use boiling water, i.e. 100 degrees centigrade, and steep for 3 to 5 minutes. But for white tea, keep the water at between 70 and 80 degrees centigrade and steep for about 4 to 5 minutes. Taste as you go and adjust based on how strong or mild you like your tea. Growing your own tea is an exciting journey that connects you directly to a tradition thousands of years old. From tending the plants to processing and brewing the leaves, you can enjoy the fruits, or rather leaves, of your labour in every cup. Well, that wraps up today's episode, and I hope you enjoyed this journey into the world of tea and perhaps feel inspired to grow some of your own right here in the UK. Join us next time as we explore another fascinating story of plant culture. Goodbye.